トビデオ
The average American probably doesn't look at Transformers and think anime. The storied larger-than-life franchise about Optimus Prime and his noble band of Autobots waging a seemingly never-ending war against the sinister Megatron and his bloodthirsty Decepticons for the fate of their planet Cybertron has gone on for over 4 decades. In that period, that story has been told, retold, and remixed through multiple mediums and generations, all for the sake of hawking to the impressionable youth of America plastic toy robots that can transform into vehicles. But the reason why the Transformers franchise has stuck around for 4 decades is that it weaves captive narratives out of its status as a toy commercial. At its heart, it's a sci-fi war story of good versus evil, one side trying to gain an inch over the other, full of tales of heroics, intrigue, shifting alliances, and large-scale clashes between friend and foe. It's such a timeless story that it almost feels like the Transformers have always existed. That is obviously untrue. The origin of the Transformers is well-documented history. They were the product of Hasbro taking notice of the toys Japanese manufacturers were producing and applied their own spin to it. Yet, even with that knowledge, the average American layman would presume that the Transformers are a wholly local creation. They did get Michael Bay to do 5 movies for them after all.
Autobots.
What's cracking, little bitches?
And I myself know that's complete bulltish because of my own history with the Transformers. I consider myself more of an acquaintance of the robots in disguise than an actual fan. I certainly know more than the average non-fan of the franchise by virtue of hanging around nerds most of my life. My serious engagement with the franchise, however, is quite limited. Gen 1 Transformers was way before my time, and I never was motivated to wake up early in the morning for a chance to watch Beast Wars at its 6 AM airtime in my area. But there was one Transformers show I did make time for, and that was Transformers Armada. The second Transformers anime series to get a release in the States. Yes, I did watch it more because it was an anime and less because it was Transformers, and boy was it ever an anime, what with its premise centered around a gotta catch 'em all conceit like the Minicons, and the transformation of known bitchbot Starscream into a sexy brooding anti-villain with conflicting morals. But even with the existence of Transformers being produced outside of America, so many people assumed Transformers anime was an, at the time, recent phenomenon. To which I respond, well, what the hell is this then? Sometime after the Autobots and Decepticons crash-landed on the planet Earth, got the vehicle transformation powers, and continued the fight that started on Cybertron, the conflict has entered a new phase of the battle. In a secret underground facility away from prying Decepticon eyes, the Autobots, under the direction of Ultra Magnus and their human allies, the Witwikis, spoiler alert, they have no lines in this whatsoever, are working diligently on a clandestine project known only as Scramble City, a giant mobile fortress that they hope will turn the tide of war against Megatron's forces. Speaking of the Metallic Devil, the eyes of Megatron begin to pry as Soundwave has sent his cassettes on a reconnaissance mission and have discovered the existence of this secret Autobot weapon. With the secret out, Megatron dispatches his elite forces and Starscream to take the project offline. Optimus Prime and the rest of the Autobots find themselves with their backs against the wall, with Megatron sending nearly his entire forces after them, including the Constructicons, who combine into the almighty Devastator. Luckily, the Autobots have their own elite units in the form of the Aerial Bots, and now the battle looks to be more balanced. The question remains, how long can that hold until Scramble City can go online? 1986's Transformers Scramble City Mobilization is an incredibly niche title among anime fans that one would question if it even counted as an anime. But among Transformers fans, it's one of the greatest historical oddities produced by Generation 1, a generation of Transformers that was already plenty odd.
You can't keep me in here, Megatron!
That is because Scramble City Mobilization is the first Transformers media to be produced solely for the release of Japan. It was made by Japanese, for Japanese. It never received any English import nor official localization, and as far as original studio Toei is concerned, they would like to keep it that way. Because of this, Scramble City Mobilization has become the byproduct of a lot of misinformation surrounding it in the English-speaking Transformers fandom. Namely, people have assumed that this was not just the first Transformers production done under Japan's watch, but the thing meant to introduce Transformers to the Japanese public in general. As we will soon see, that piece of trivia is woefully incorrect. But once you see how Scramble City came into being, it's not surprising that some people would draw that conclusion. So what were the true origins of Transformers Scramble City Mobilization? Is it any good? And how important is it in the grand Transformers franchise universe? Time to transform, roll out, and see. We of course start with the history of Transformers. Some of you watching this probably know the story, but others don't, so think of this section as a brief Toys That Made Us episode with less wacky sound effects and editing. Once upon a time, in 1983, representatives from the American toy company Hasbro were sent to the Tokyo Toy Show in Japan to look for and research any potential toys that they could import to the American market. This being the 80s, the toy industry was entering a veritable golden age. Coleco had Cabbage Patch Kids, Mattel had He-Man, and Kenner had Star Wars. Competition for both young Gen X's attention and their parents' money were heating up, so of course, Hasbro turned to a flush with cash Japan for ideas. It was there they made contact with toy company Takara and their latest hit toy lines, Microchange and Diaclone. The premise of both toy lines was that they were robots who could turn into everyday objects on Earth like vehicles, electronics, and weapons. Robots in disguise, as they were. Hasbro immediately bought the license for American distribution and partnered up with Takara that day, and thus the Transformers were born.
Transformers, robots in disguise. The Transformers, more than meets the eye.
The Transformers from Marvel Comics.
From the word go, the Transformers franchise has been a joint effort between American and Japanese companies. To pin all its success on the West is willful ignorance. One cannot exist without the other. In the West, you had the backstory created by Marvel Comics editor-in-chief Jim Shooter, and the character writing done by Dennis O'Neil and Bob Budiansky. And on the Japanese side, you had the iconic designs for the characters done by Macross creator Shoji Kawamori. This was all necessary for the big marketing campaign Hasbro had in store for their new toy line. This was the 80s after all, so how well you could market your toys to kids was the highest priority. And thanks to deregulating Ronnie, you could do that through a Saturday morning cartoon. Based off the success of their three-pronged marketing scheme that they had started with their G.I. Joe toy line, introducing a toy line with a comic series and a cartoon series, Hasbro was keen to do the same thing with Transformers. Through a joint production between Marvel Production and Griffin Bacall Advertising Agency's Sunbow Production, the Transformers cartoon series was conceived in 1984, starting with the three-part origin miniseries More Than Meets the Eye. But doing the actual animation part for this miniseries would be the studio that would end up doing the lion's share of the animation for the series as a whole, Toei Animation. While Toei had been a legendary studio up to that point and were still producing legendary work around that time, it was in the 80s that they were taking on American animation duties that were outsourced to them. Out of the 4 studios that were chosen to do animation for the Transformers series, Toei produced 66 out of 98 episodes. 2/3 of the series. According to producer Kozo Morishita, Toei was specifically sought out by Hasbro because Marvel saw what Japanese animators could do on a weekly schedule and a relatively low budget. The foundation of Japanese animation is to depict motion effectively with a small number of frames. They were amazed that we could achieve this every week on a limited budget. In 1983, we created a short commercial animation for the G.I. Joe toys, animating the toys themselves. The United States was astonished by the quality we achieved. It wasn't perfect though. Thanks to rush production and trying to get episodes out the gate ASAP, on top of Sunbow being notoriously stingy with their budgets, a lot of errors appeared in the animation. Many episodes went from script to screen in as little as 4 months to sync up with the toys hitting the shelves. Certainly not helped by Toei recutting the American storyboards in their own style for the benefit of their animators, an extra stage in production that they also outsourced to the Philippines to meet the strict deadlines. The Transformers cartoon was an instant hit in the fall of 1984 and paid off handsomely for Hasbro several years down the line. Do you know why nobody remembers Tonka's GoBots despite having roughly the same concept, better sales, and a year's head start? Cartoons, my friends. Cartoons. It did not take long for Takara to want to get more involved in this racket. In 1985, they brought the Autobots and Decepticons to Japan, where it too had massive success. Despite most of the toys having just been available at most 2 years ago under the Diaclone and Microchange line, Transformers far outpaced the sales of both. This was credited to the cartoon, which was also brought over. The story of a war between giant robots enthralled Japanese children, and this being a country where giant robot media was more commonplace, having the main characters be the robots themselves instead of a human pilot was an incredibly fresh take on the mecha genre. Takara did run into some hiccups, mostly with licensing issues. Because Hasbro also decided to grab the license to a few molds owned by Bandai, it meant that Takara was effectively banned from selling a few Transformers models. It also meant that they had to push a few episodes featuring the character Jetfire all the way to the end of the run until they got said licensing issues straightened out. By the second year, Takara had, for the most part, caught up with Hasbro in terms of toy releases. Their 1986 line was near identical to what Hasbro had in store, the focus being on the combining special teams, the giants Metroplex and Trypticon, and the city commander Ultra Magnus. There was also Galvatron, who was created for the movie release, but because that release was delayed in Japan, we won't talk about it here. What's more important is that these toys were released under the subtitle Scramble City, situated underneath the classic Toei-style main title, Fight Super Robot Lifeform Transformers. Takara, however, was not content just letting the important cartoon series do all the advertising for them. After all, this was the age of the original video anime, and they did have the studio where most of the animation for the Transformers cartoon took place nearby. At first glance, Scramble City Mobilization looks like any other Transformers media out there at the time. Under the direction of Toei veteran Yuji Endo, it looks like another episode of the Transformers cartoon series. Some of this has to do with the fact that, out of this 23-minute OVA, 7 minutes are devoted to a recap of the series so far, laid out by more than meets the eye, as well as some important information on the threat of Devastator. So with that, plus the opening and closing themes, the new footage only accounts for 15 minutes of the runtime. That recap is the cause for so much of the misinformation spread about this OVA initially. My guess is that people only came across this through raw bootlegs, and knowing that they are using stock footage from the cartoon proper for these recaps, assumed that this was the introductory course to the bots.
豊かな地球のエネルギー資源に目をつけたメガトロンは新たなる宇宙征服の野望を抱くのであった。
I also bet you are wondering what's up with the constant narration throughout, even after the recap section ends. While the dialogue and stories remained faithful to their American counterparts, the big change Takara and Toei employed was to have extensive narration from voice actor Issei Masamune. This was not only because Masamune was the announcer for the toy commercials, as well as the heavily filtered voice of Soundwave, but the narration was added because the Japanese dub opted to skew towards a younger demographic than the American show. It was meant to help them follow along with the plots, but it's so excessive that it feels more like a commentary track than actual narration.
度重なるデストロンのスパイ活動に歯止めをかけるため、サイバトロンは通信品ブロードキャストを中心としたカセットボット部隊を組織していた。
Aside from all that, the original animation by Toei does a great job maintaining continuity with the rest of the series while still looking slightly better than what you would see on TV. That doesn't stop it from having animation errors or the occasional silly moments. But the choreography and the effects animation are fast-paced to match the tone of a desperate battle. And it's also the only time in G1 animation the combiner limb swapping ability is portrayed. Turns out, it's actually painful. This OVA is also a worthwhile showcase of the Japanese seiyuu talents doing their own takes of iconic characters. Seizo Kato's battle-hardened baritone makes Megatron into this cold-hearted general ruling his men with a literal iron fist. Starscream trades in the raspy Weasley voice of Chris Latta with the handsome young voice of Hirotaka Suzuki, giving him the demeanor of a smooth pretty boy sucking up to the boss he desires to depose. But the standout performance, however brief it may be, is Tesho Ginda as Optimus Prime, here called Convoy. In contrast to the paternal stoicism of Peter Cullen, Ginda is burning with fiery passion. This is a machine who cares about the men under his commands, and will be damned if he sees them die for nothing. Apart from all those things though, I find it difficult to give this OVA the traditional analytic review because, at its core, it's just a toy commercial. Yeah, you can say the same thing about the entire franchise, but remember, they disguise that commercialism through engaging storytelling. Here, I don't think I've ever seen the commercial ambitions for Transformers be so naked. If I can sum up the plot for this 15-minute anime, it's look, a new toy, look, a new toy, several new toys that if you buy all of them, you can combine into a bigger toy, look, an extremely big new toy. That's it. That's Scramble City Mobilization. The only thing missing from it is the toy price for each robot flashing in the corner. Luckily, Takara anticipated that and remade this entire OVA with the toys themselves, along with each of their price tags. Welcome to the 80s, bitches. And if you think that buried within this commercial-ass commercial is a satisfying story, then I've got news for you, bucko. After Scramble City comes online and turns the tide by transforming into Metroplex, the Autobots are enjoying their victory handshake. But then suddenly, from beneath the waves, emerges Godzilla, Tripticon. He roars triumphantly as Megatron gloats over the reveal of his final trump card over a shot of the exhausted Autobot forces. And then we hit credits. Yeah, OVA's over. No resolution. It ends on a cliffhanger that, I'm told, only gets resolved in supplementary material. This is why I struggle to actually analyze it as an anime. It even defies a traditional star rating. I might as well try to make a letterbox review for the Robert Loggia orange juice ad while I'm at it.
New Minute Maid Orange Tangerine with calcium.
Yeah.
The Scramble City Mobilization is still worth talking about in one regard: its importance in Transformers history, because it marks the moment where Japan broke away from the American continuity and formed its own. To quote tfwiki.net, who was very helpful in the making of this video, continuity in the Transformers franchise is a great and terrifying beast. Even from the beginning, there was no single unified universe because the cartoons and comics formed two branching paths. But even then, it wasn't expected to get as complicated as that. And then Takara and Toei had to pull a Fleetwood Mac and go their own way. Because their only source of media was the imported cartoon, that was the sole continuity Japan had to rely on. Even the manga comics tied into the show, so they were slotted into that continuity. Scramble City Mobilization changed all that. It was the first original production done by the Japan side of the Transformers franchise, and with that, it set a precedent. After Scramble City, Takara continued to air the American cartoon with Season 3 premiering under the title Fight Super Robot Lifeform Transformers 2010. And because this was the post-movie season and said movie got delayed in Japan, they had to publish expository material in TV Magazine to onboard viewers. Yeah, imagine hearing about Optimus Prime dying in a TV Guide article. But after that, Hasbro was pretty much done with the Transformers cartoon, even though they did 2 more seasons. Season 4 consisted of a 3-part miniseries called The Rebirth, and Season 5 wasn't even really a season since it was just re-aired material and the movie split up in 5 parts, all with a wraparound featuring an Optimus Prime puppet telling his stories to a little boy. Season 4 got released in Japan as another OVA, and Season 5 obviously got passed over because it clearly didn't count.
Okay, Tommy.
Hasbro clearly wanted to move on to the next big thing because at this point in the States, the Transformers were getting their lunch eaten by 4 teenage turtle dudes with attitude. Takara, however, had different plans.
We're done when I say we're done.
Taking a cue from what they did with Scramble City, Takara commissioned Toei to produce a new series based on the upcoming 1987 toy line. That became Transformers: The Headmasters, and that was the anime that established the Japanese continuity for Transformers. Headmasters would beget more original anime based off of the Generation 1 storyline, which would later beget future Japan-only Transformers media like the TV Magazine comics, the Beast Wars sequels, Car Robots, multiple Pro series, and Transformers Kiss players, but you don't need to know about the last one. So why don't more people know about all of this, aside from, the nerds? It has a lot to do with Toei, remember? Toei is notorious in the Transformers fandom with being parsimonious with official releases of their anime, and Scramble City is the biggest victim of all of this. When Sony tried to release it, they were provided with the video but were refused the audio track, which forced them to replace it with a non-optional commentary track. And Shout Factory, when they were negotiating getting Headmasters, tried to get Scramble City into the bundle, but they were outright denied. To date, it's one of the few Transformers anime series that does not have an official release outside of Japan. Luckily, we have the unofficial releases, if you know where to find them. Scramble City Mobilization does little to escape its confines as a glorified toy commercial, unlike most Transformers media. I don't think it wants to. The mission statement of showing off the newest and shiniest toys in action is coming in loud and clear. So, as an anime, it's difficult to recommend. But as a piece of history, I totally recommend it. It is a piece of the puzzle of Generation 1 which cannot afford to be lost. So even if it is nothing more than an unconcealed commercial, it's cool to witness a part of the Transformers begin to transform into its own thing. I guess there really is more than meets the eye about this anime. And I apologize for ending this video on that cliche. Thank you all for watching. If you like this video or want to support this channel, please donate to my Patreon. Each dollar can give you early access to my videos as they come out, as well as keep the channel running a bit more smoothly. You can also subscribe to the channel, ring that bell for notifications, or just like this video. Either way, you'll be helping me out. That's all for now. See you for the next round of tapes.